Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to chat with you guys a little bit about your lats and the deadlift, because this is something that when it's stated sounds controversial, but if you observe real lifters and you look at even scientific studies and data that we have, it really isn't a controversial statement that exercises like the deadlift can build your lats. Now, here's what I want to say. I am by no means telling you that if you want maximum back development, that deadlift is the only thing you should be doing. I put an extremely serious focus on weighted chin-ups and weighted pull-ups. Right? I consider the weighted chin-up to be pretty much a primary exercise. I consider it to be almost an essential exercise that I think most people should be getting strong on. And I don't care what you compete in when I say that. I think it is a fundamental exercise. And my lats, which when I do some stuff, people realize my back is actually a bit more developed than anything else in my body, didn't come purely from deadlifts. So I want to get that out of the way. The idea of it, though, comes from the bodybuilding world. And bodybuilders have this idea that you need some sort of direct movement to stimulate muscle growth. But here's what I want to postulate to you. If you were to take a novice lifter, someone who's new to the gym, and train them for a couple of years on nothing but the deadlift, and you got their deadlift up to 500 pounds. Now, for a healthy young man, if they don't have to recover from anything else and they could do exclusively deadlifting, you actually could get the average healthy young man to a 500 deadlift in a couple of years. It's totally doable. Totally doable. As long as they're not dealing with a lot of other recovery stuff going on. Now, someone with great genetics will do it even on a full program. But, average genetics. You take someone and get them up to a 500 deadlift from starting out with like 100 pounds as a noob, and you measure their back, look at their back, do MRIs of their back, whatever you need to do to take measurements, and their lats will grow significantly. Their lats will be very noticeably bigger, very measurably bigger if you did that, right? Their lats would grow from it. Now, a lot of people would say, well, I don't understand that there's no real use of the lats in that exercise. And if we're going to talk about dynamic full range of motion movements, you would be correct. You would be correct. But that's not true that the lats aren't working. And this is one of the reasons I scoff and laugh at people who talk about squeezing the scapula together on any of their other back exercises. I don't care whether it's a pull-up, a barbell row, anything else, right? I don't care what it is. I always make fun of that. Do you know why? Because they're sacrificing performance to get an isometric squeeze at the top. They're sacrificing performance for that they could be getting more total workload in, trying to focus on that one little element. Isometric squeezes are not how you get most of your hypertrophy. Now, you can get hypertrophy from it, but here's the reason I scoff at that. Most people who are serious about their training are doing some sort of deadlifting. I don't care whether it's a sumo, a conventional, a Romanian, or even power cleans, which is, again, its own form of hip hinge. They're doing some sort of heavy hip hinge. When you do any of these exercises, watch what happens. All right, watch me right here doing speed work. So this is light for me. Your scapula are having to be held during isometric contractions. You're having to isometrically squeeze your trapezius together, and to keep your arms from pulling forward, you're already getting that squeeze, but you're getting it with a lot heavier weight than you would ever do on a pull-up. Because you guys see me deadlift over 500 pounds, right, regularly. Well, a 500-pound deadlift, can your pull-up really compete with that? Can you get that same amount of force and isometric tension on a chin-up or a pull-up? No. None of us are pulling 500 plus pounds up and squeezing it with our back. Like, my max is only my body weight plus about 100 pounds from a dead hang chin-up, right? It's about all I can do for one good rep. That's not much over 300 pounds. That's about all you're going to get. Compare that with a 500-pound deadlift, which is less than my max. It's not even in the ballpark. So when you think about it, all these people these bodybuilder types who actually say stuff like, you should be squeezing the scapula together. Well, think about that. You're getting that on your deadlifts. And almost everyone who trains the deadlift with any degree of regularity, and I mean they do a couple sets heavy once a week and progress on it, right? I don't even talk about taking it that serious. You're going to be able to deadlift a hell of a lot more than you can row, than you can pull up, than you can chin up. So you're going to get your isometric training right there for it. That's why I tell people don't worry about it. But that isometric contraction matters. If you did nothing but isometric, extremely heavy isometric contractions, would you gain muscle? Of course you would. Would it be maximum muscle? No, because you're not working a muscle through its full range of motion. But it's getting work. In other words, you'll gain muscle. We know that isometric work produces some muscle growth, particularly really heavy isometric work. And I'm going to say 400 or 500 pounds. Having to hold that together with your shoulder blades while you break it off the floor, that's a pretty large amount of isometric work. Well, the lats and the traps, mid-traps and the lats are doing that work. They're having to hold that position. That is a tremendous amount of isometric work for your lats. That has a growth stimulus. Now, is that as good as doing an all-out set of pull-ups with your 5-rep max for a 5-rep set? No, it's not as much growth stimulation as that would be, but it is growth stimulation. And it will cause growth. It just won't be as good. Well, the same thing. I've had people say, well, there's no movement of the shoulder or the arms in there, so how are the lats getting stimulated? Well, also look. Isn't there extension of the shoulder? Watch me when I come up and deadlift again. Even on a sumo deadlift. And a sumo deadlift is not as pronounced as a conventional deadlift, but I do conventional also. I train several different deadlift variations personally. There's a whole host of reasons for that. But watch the extension of the shoulder happen. Right? It's right there. Look where I'm at. Pull. There is. Watch the arm. The arm and the shoulder joint is moving. Isn't that one of the functions of the lats also? Yes, it is. That is one of the functions of the lats. That is one of the functions of your lats. There are muscles in your arms and your back being worked by that shoulder movement, and it is being done under force. Now, is that also enough to get maximum lat development? No, of course not, because your lats have more functions than that. That's just one of their functions. And it's not going, again, through a full range of motion. However, if we were to go purely off EMG data, which I would never recommend that we do, heavy deadlifts actually for lat activation, for peak activation, actually beats a lot of your direct lat exercises. I mean, look at Brett Contreras' data on that stuff. I mean, it showed a hell of a lot of lat activation, even on a 400-pound rack pull, right? Which is easier than a 400-pound deadlift. That's an easier exercise. He did like a 400-pound rack pull and tested it, and the lat activation actually beat some of the direct lat exercises that involved the biceps and everything else. It actually beat them. Now, EMGs are not the be-all, end-all, and I would never, again, suggest that the deadlift is superior for the lats to those exercises, because I don't think that it is. But it can give them a run for their money. It can give them a run for their money. And to say that it doesn't contribute, look, if you have an exercise that's a partial and isometric work and everything else, and maybe isn't the perfect exercise for a muscle, but you're doing seriously heavy weight on it with any amount of workload, that's going to contribute to your muscle growth in that muscle. That is part of the total cumulative training volume that muscle is subjected to throughout the week and the month. It matters. It has a growth stimulus. So when people try to say that deadlifts don't grow your lats or stimulate your lats in any way, I mean, that's provably false nonsense. Look at the two different elements that I just described that you guys can clearly see have to happen as part of the lift with a heavy weight. Right? It's very obvious biomechanically the lats do help. They are put under a hell of a lot of load, even though it's not full range of motion, so it's not ideal. Certainly not ideal. We know range of motion is important for muscle growth. No reasonable person's in denial of that. I would hope they're not. But isometrics and partials do contribute. And then you go look at even EMG studies, the lats light up like a Christmas tree when we actually check for muscle activation, which involves muscle fibers contracting on these exercises. So it absolutely stimulates to your lat growth. It absolutely has a training effect. And to argue otherwise is just pure ignorance. It's pure ignorance. It's just that when you say that it has an effect, people might assume that you mean that that's all you need to do. And that I wouldn't agree with. I would say that's absolutely not the case. It contributes, but it's certainly not the be-all, end-all. And I personally believe that you need to do other stuff. Like, I believe that you actually need to, that it's beneficial. And honestly, if you want to be all around strong, it's essential to do other stuff. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.